I do have strong memories of starting out in Manhattan. Well, I remember the city. I might remember the man I was dating. I guess I think of myself as a mother first, and the career was there to support being a mom.
Adrienne Barbeau, a star who once made both Broadway and Hollywood bow their heads. From the tough Rizzo in Grease to Carol in Maude, from the scream queen of The Fog to the iconic voice of Catwoman in Batman. The animated series, she has traveled through more than half a century of art, leaving behind unforgettable marks and becoming a symbol for generations of audiences. Yet behind that dazzling spotlight lies a truth that evokes sorrow. The woman whose posters once adorned the bedrooms of millions of American men, hailed as the sex symbol of the 1970s, never truly saw herself as seductive. While audiences remembered only the blood-curdling screams, she quietly endured broken marriages, panic attacks, broadcast live on television, and long nights raising children in silence. And it is precisely in those fragile moments that Adrienne Barbeau revealed her real strength. She sang suspended upside down on stage at 70, stepped onto the screen again at 80, and openly declared she needed no man to complete her life, only her 3 sons calling her mom. Thus, the story of Adrienne Barbeau is not merely the journey of an actress. It is the resilience of a woman both courageous and unyielding. So, what truly remains after that haunting scream? Adrienne Jo Barbeau was born in 1945 in Sacramento, California, into a middle-class family. Her childhood was not spent under stage lights, but on a 20-acre vineyard in Selma, near Fresno, where her grandparents lived. It was the only peaceful place Adrienne ever called her real home, even though the house lacked running water. In that rustic setting, her grandmother's 78 RPM records, echoing with the voices of Eartha Kitt and Frankie Lane, planted in the young girl a strange fascination with music and performance. From elementary school, Adrienne's talent was already apparent. In 5th grade, her mother enrolled her in voice lessons after hearing others remark that her singing carried something special. During her years at Del Mar High School in San Jose, Adrienne not only studied but threw herself into every theatrical activity. As a teenager, she joined the San Jose Civic Light Opera, one of the largest and most successful arts organizations of the time. Her first professional stage appearance came as Tuptim in The King and I, a small role, yet enough to affirm that her passion for the stage was no passing fancy. After graduating in 1963, Adrienne attended Foothill College in Los Altos Hills for a year, before leaving at 19 to dive headfirst into performing. She officially joined the Civic Light Opera and soon embarked on tours across Southeast Asia, bringing music and song to American soldiers. It was her first experience realizing that art was not only meant for applause in a theater, but could also serve as an emotional lifeline for those on the front lines. Adrienne's youth was a curious weave, the calm of a vineyard, the brilliance of the stage, and journeys that brought her face to face with weary lives scarred by war. All of it shaped a unique foundation, both simple and strong, preparing Adrienne for the road ahead. Adrienne Barbeau never imagined she would make a living as an actress. After graduating high school in San Jose in 1963, her plan was simple: get a teaching degree and maybe teach drama for fun. But fate intervened unexpectedly. She joined the USO musical troupe of the Light Opera Theater and began touring across Southeast Asia to entertain American soldiers. Earning just $7 a day, Adrienne, at 18, sang and danced for troops in Korea, Japan, Taiwan, the Philippines, and even on islands that had once been nuclear test sites. It wasn't only the first time she was paid to perform. It was also the moment Adrienne realized she could never leave the stage. In 1965, instead of settling for a secure job at the State Department, she made a bold choice. She gathered $1,000 in savings, packed her belongings into cardboard boxes, and flew straight to New York, a city where she knew no one. She worked as a waitress at Maddie's Mardi Gras, a bar notorious for its owner, Maddie the Horse, while earning tips as a go-go dancer in a black bodysuit she had sewn herself with glittering sequins. "I never wore white boots like in the movies," she later joked. "Just a bodysuit, fishnet stockings, and high heels. Enough to sparkle while dancing on a tiny piano in New Jersey." Few could have guessed that the woman who would one day be crowned a scream queen once danced in a cage in New Jersey just to pay rent. Yet in that noisy world, she began to learn how to command the attention of a crowd. By day, Adrienne chased auditions and attended acting classes. In Stella Adler's class, she was scolded simply for wearing a hat indoors. At HB Studio with Bill Hickey, she had an unforgettable lesson. During a dramatic scene, she picked up the cue too quickly and rattled off her lines like a machine, prompting Hickey to remind her, "Sometimes people have to think before they speak." That moment of embarrassment became her very first lasting acting lesson. Even when admitted to Lee Strasberg's class, the master of method acting, Adrienne soon dropped out, unable to embrace the exercise of imagining a glass of water. But it was precisely these stumbles that sharpened her instincts on stage and taught her never to fear failure again. The real opportunity arrived in 1968. After an exhausting 5-hour audition with director Hal Prince and casting associate Shirley Rich, Adrienne was chosen as an understudy in the legendary musical Fiddler on the Roof. From the wings, she gradually earned her way into playing Hodel, the rebellious daughter who dares to leave her family for the revolution. Her heartfelt rendition of "Far from the Home I Love," both powerful and aching, moved audiences to tears. During her 2 years with Fiddler, Adrienne shared a dressing room with another young actress, Bette Midler. Two girls far from home, crammed into the backstage of Broadway, they forged a lifelong friendship. After Fiddler, Adrienne took a daring step by joining Stag Movie, 1971, an off-Broadway musical satire about pornography. On stage at the Village Gate, she sang while hanging upside down and even performed a nude scene. It wasn't about shock value. She understood she needed a role of her own to be truly noticed. "All I could think about was hitting the right notes, even if my breasts were bouncing against my chin," she later recalled with her trademark humor. The show quickly drew attention, making Adrienne a face directors could no longer overlook. Then came 1972 and the breakthrough that would define her: Grease. Adrienne was cast as Betty Rizzo, the tough girl with a fragile heart, a role completely opposite to her real-life personality. At first, she nearly lost the part because director Tom Moore insisted on truth and thought she looked more like a street girl than a trained actress. Even Madeline Kahn, upon meeting Adrienne, exclaimed, "You're an actress? You're so real I thought they picked you up off the street." It was a remark Adrienne cherished all her life. Another fascinating backstage story, the song "There Are Worse Things I Could Do," the emotional core of Rizzo, was almost cut from the script. Only after someone on the creative team fought for it did the number remain, and it became the most haunting moment of Act Two. That song, coupled with Adrienne's sharp performance, earned her a Tony nomination and a Theatre World Award, cementing her as a Broadway star. From there, Adrienne returned to California to play Carol in the sitcom Maude, 1972-1978. It was the turning point that brought her into the homes of millions of American viewers, a new milestone marking the beginning of her radiant rise. From that point on, the name Adrienne Barbeau was no longer tied only to Broadway. Through the 1970s and 1980s, she entered the brightest phase of her career, at once a real-life sex symbol and the reigning scream queen of the silver screen. Classic horror films, a sultry 1978 poster, and her role as Carol Trainer in Maude combined to make Adrienne an icon who defined an entire decade. Yet behind the dazzling spotlight was an ironic truth. This actress never saw herself as a sex symbol. When Maude premiered in 1972, millions of American TV viewers first encountered Adrienne Barbeau as Carol Traynor, the strong-willed yet troubled daughter of B. Arthur's character. 6 seasons, running until 1978, made her a household name, and from then on, Adrienne was no longer just a Broadway star. Television had turned her into a phenomenon. Interestingly, while the public remembered Carol as a sharp, witty woman, Adrienne herself became branded with a different image: the sexy woman. She once admitted that audiences rarely paid attention to her lines because, as she put it, "Every time I walked down the stairs, all eyes stopped at the part of my body that went before me." That candor unintentionally cemented her as a sex symbol, something she had never sought to become. The pinnacle came in 1978 when a promotional poster of Adrienne in a purple corset was released. Intended merely as a way to balance things out after her stage work, the poster unexpectedly sold on par with Farrah Fawcett and Cheryl Tiegs, turning Adrienne into one of the most iconic pin-up figures of the 1970s. The paradox was clear. The woman who never thought of herself as seductive became a generational poster girl for American men. But if she had stopped at that image, Adrienne would never have endured across decades. The 1980s cinema boom crowned her as a defining scream queen. Under the direction of John Carpenter, her former husband, she appeared in The Fog, 1980, Escape from New York, 1981, and later Swamp Thing, 1982. She was more than a pretty woman who screamed. Adrienne brought depth to characters caught in chaos, making audiences both terrified and empathetic. What's striking is that even in roles tied to her sensual image, Adrienne saw herself as a comedienne. "I just wanted to crack jokes, to do my job well. If my looks help me get more roles, so be it," she once said. That simplicity made her unique. No scandals, no exhibitionism, yet an undeniable magnetism. Looking back, Adrienne defined a decade through contrasts: a witty sitcom star, an unexpected sex symbol, and a queen of horror films. And from this point forward, every role and every image she embodied left a lasting mark on audiences' memories. After Maude and her collaborations with John Carpenter, Adrienne stepped into the 1980s as an indispensable face of mainstream entertainment. She appeared in Creepshow, 1982, the cult horror classic by George A. Romero and Stephen King, in a role dripping with irony and cold precision. Just a few years later, audiences saw her shine in box office hits like Cannonball Run, 1981, and Back to School, 1986, films that carried her name beyond the label of Scream Queen and into the living rooms of American families everywhere. What stands out is that, despite her ties to horror, Adrienne never allowed herself to be boxed in. She defined her career through versatility. She could play a fierce woman in a life-or-death struggle, and then, almost seamlessly, make an entire theater erupt with laughter through her natural sense of humor. That adaptability kept her standing strong in a Hollywood that often discards female icons after just a few years. As the glow of the big screen began to plateau, Adrienne proved her appeal was not bound to any single medium. She joined a string of television series: Carnival on HBO, Sons of Anarchy, Revenge, General Hospital. Different in style but unified by one truth: every time Adrienne appeared, she reminded viewers that her magnetism had not dimmed with age. In Carnival, her role as Ruthie, the mysterious snake charmer, left a haunting mark, showing once again her knack for choosing unique parts to reinvent herself. Another landmark was her voice acting career. Adrienne became the definitive voice of Catwoman in Batman, the animated series. With her signature husky tone, she infused the character with a blend of seduction, danger, and mystery, turning this version of Catwoman into one of the most beloved in DC's history. From there, she continued to voice roles in major video games such as God of War, Halo 4, and Fallout 76. Many younger fans first came to know her not on screen, but through a headset. Adrienne also left her mark on the literary world. Her memoir, There Are Worse Things I Could Do, became a bestseller, filled with biting, self-deprecating, behind-the-scenes stories that revealed the woman behind the roles. She then ventured into fiction with Vampires of Hollywood and its sequels, Love Bites, Make Me Dead, proving her creativity was not confined to stage or screen. But perhaps the most astonishing moment was how Adrienne refused to let age define her. At 70, she stunned both audiences and colleagues when she took on the role of Grandma Bertha in Pippin. The character required performing the number No Time at All while hanging upside down high above the stage. The production planned to use a stunt double, but Adrienne refused. "If this role is mine, then I have to do it myself." She trained so hard she once fainted on the rigging. Yet on opening night, she beamed as she sang, suspended 15 feet in the air, without a safety net. The audience erupted in a standing ovation, and the moment became a symbol of her unyielding spirit. More than half a century later, across Broadway, Hollywood, television, and even video games, Adrienne has proven one thing: she never needed scandal to become a legend. With resilience, raw magnetism, and boundless versatility, Adrienne Barbeau carved her name across multiple fields of entertainment, becoming nothing less than a timeless icon. And then, after all the glory, comes the time to look back. How did this woman, who lived without scandal, truly live off stage? It is her personal life, with its loves, marriages, and private choices, that completes the story of Adrienne Barbeau. Behind the spotlight, her journey also holds pieces few have ever seen, backstage stories that reveal her toughness, her blunt honesty, and the fragile moments audiences rarely glimpsed. Few know that Adrienne spent 8 relentless years working on stage before she even secured a proper agent. Even when she was nominated for a Tony for her role as Rizzo in Grease, she had only just signed with William Morris. That grueling path highlighted a persistence few actresses could endure. Even after breaking into Hollywood, she never hesitated to stand up to the powerful. Adrienne once flatly hung up on Mike Ovitz, the founder of CAA and one of the most influential figures in 1970s-80s Hollywood. For many artists, such a move would have been career suicide. But for Adrienne, it was simply refusing to let anyone treat her with disdain. During Maude, she refused to settle for being just the daughter in a sitcom. She actively negotiated to share the stage with Roy Clark at Harrah's in Lake Tahoe, then one of the country's premier music venues. With persistence, she proved she could be both a television actress and a true live performer. But the spotlight came with its price. On The Tonight Show in 1973, Adrienne captivated the nation, yet backstage, she broke out in hives from stress. Behind the laughter and applause was a vulnerable Adrienne, terrified she might collapse live on air. It is these fragments, the steel against power, the determination to define herself, and the very human anxieties, that created Adrienne Barbeau's unique allure. A star without scandal, yet with enough backstage surprises to keep audiences enthralled for decades. Away from the stage lights, Adrienne Barbeau never lived as the sex symbol the public imagined her to be. For her, the most important thing was never fame, but family. And it is in her private life that the true contrasts of a woman who spent half a century in Hollywood come into full view. Adrienne's first marriage came in 1979 when she wed director John Carpenter, the master of horror behind The Fog and Escape from New York. They first met on the set of Someone Is Watching Me in 1978. At that time, Adrienne still carried the image of the daughter on Maude, with no film experience, while Carpenter was already making waves with Assault on Precinct 13. At first, she kept her distance, having heard he was seeing someone else until the very last day of shooting when he unexpectedly confessed, "I've fallen in love with you." Just months later, on January 1st, 1979, they married. To Adrienne, John Carpenter was nothing like the cold, sinister aura audiences associated with his films. She once described him as wonderful, gentle, sensitive, though yes, sometimes in the middle of the night, he'd crawl into the room with a towel over his head just to make me laugh. In stark contrast to Hollywood's glitz, they chose a quiet life together. Evenings at their Hollywood Hills home, John playing guitar while Adrienne knitted, or the two playing parcheesi. Adrienne was so meticulous about nutrition that she weaned him off sugar and replaced it with honey, while Carpenter, for his part, was happy with meat, potatoes, and bacon fat. Carpenter also gave Adrienne her very first film role in The Fog, 1980. But over time, their differences, in filmmaking, in lifestyle, grew clear. Adrienne once said she saw Hollywood as a meat market, while John was enthralled by the art of manipulating audiences with cinematic scares. As Carpenter threw himself into one successful horror project after another, Adrienne longed for the simplicity of a normal family life. Together, they had one son, John Cody Carpenter, who would later become a musician and composer. But the weight of their work and the gap in emotional needs strained the marriage. By 1984, the two officially divorced. In her memoir, Adrienne wrote, "I realized I couldn't keep chasing his nightmares on screen when all I needed was a quiet evening at home with my family." Not losing faith in love, in 1992, Adrienne remarried, this time to writer-actor Billy Van Zandt, 12 years her junior. At the time, many called her foolish, but Adrienne paid no attention. To her, it was a tender, refreshing romance, strong enough that she was willing to start over at 46. For Billy, it was a first marriage. For Adrienne, it brought something even more precious, the joy of becoming a mother again. At 38, she had given birth to Cody, her son, with John Carpenter. But it wasn't until the age of 51 that Adrienne experienced what she called the greatest miracle of my life, the birth of her twin sons, William and Walker. She often said that the real challenge of late motherhood wasn't her age, but raising two children at once. Both of my pregnancies were wonderful. I felt full of energy. If there was any difference, it was patience. I was far more patient with Cody than I was in my younger years, and I was ready to give up my career to be with my children, never once seeing it as a sacrifice, she recalled. Adrienne was equally candid about the values she wanted to pass on: respect, the ability to understand others instead of judging them, and the power of language. "We never said shut up in our house," she explained. To her, words were as important as love, and teaching her children to express their feelings was her way of keeping the family strong. But marriage is never so simple. The age gap, the demands of work, and differences in temperament gradually created distance. After nearly 2 decades together, Adrienne and Billy chose to part ways. She emerged from the marriage with her 3 sons, Cody, William, and Walker, but also with a new strength, that of a single mother who refused to be defeated by life's challenges. Adrienne Barbeau's private life was never marked by scandal. After 2 marriages filled with trials, she chose a quieter path. She rarely appeared at Hollywood's noisy parties, devoting her time instead to raising her children, writing, and pursuing projects that suited her pace. In her memoir, she admitted there were many moments of anxiety, but rather than letting it consume her, Adrienne learned to channel it into creativity. "If I don't have a career, at least I have my children. If I'm not young, at least I have wisdom. My personal life has never been perfect, but I've learned to cherish what remains." Her 3 sons, Cody, William, and Walker, became her greatest anchors. Adrienne once quipped, "At this age, I don't need a man to complete my life. I just need 3 boys to call me mom." The line, both witty and poignant, revealed a different Adrienne. Not the scream queen, not the sex symbol, but a mother who had weathered loss and now found peace in the warmth of her home. behind her smile, there were still moments of fragility. Adrienne once confessed to feeling overwhelmed when she realized she was 15 years older than most mothers, yet she never let her children feel that difference. Instead, she raised them with patience, with lessons in respect for language, in speaking emotions, and in placing understanding above judgment. For Adrienne, the greatest love was never in the lights or the fame, but in her 3 children, the lifelong roles she would never give up. And it was there, in those quiet, simple moments, that Adrienne Barbeau found a happiness no red carpet could ever equal. Adrienne Barbeau was never just a face on the screen. She became a symbol of an era, a generation. When people speak of the Scream Queen, her name stands alongside Jamie Lee Curtis and Fay Wray, for she embodied that archetype of a woman both fragile and resilient in films like The Fog and Swamp Thing. It was a template that paved the way for countless horror heroines to come, women who did not merely run, but who fought back, endured, and left emotional aftershocks behind. But Adrienne's legacy extends far beyond that. With her signature husky voice, she became the definitive sound of Catwoman in Batman, the animated series. Entire generations, especially children of the 1990s, remembered that voice before they even knew Adrienne's name. Later, when she appeared in blockbuster video games like God of War and Fallout 76, she proved once again that her appeal could thrive even in spaces where her face was no longer present. On the level of popular culture, Adrienne also helped define the 1970s through pure contrast. She was both the sharp, witty Carol in Maude and the unexpected sex symbol immortalized in that 1978 poster. She never claimed the label sex symbol, but her candor only deepened the intrigue, making audiences remember her all the more. Critics have called it the Adrienne paradox, a woman who never sought the spotlight, yet became the focal point for an entire generation of American men. More importantly, her legacy rests in her different way of living. In a Hollywood where scandal was often a tool for survival, Adrienne chose quiet strength. She wrote books, raised children, sang upside down on stage at 70, and still drew standing ovations. Her influence, therefore, was not only for fans of horror, but also for women searching for a balance between passion and private life. Today, looking back, Adrienne Barbeau stands as a timeless icon, not bound to one role, one label, or one career phase. Her legacy stretches from Broadway to Hollywood, from the small screen to the recording booth. And above all, it lives in the image of a woman who stayed true to herself, defying the judgments of her time. So, what remains when the stage lights finally dim? How has Adrienne Barbeau chosen to live in her 70s? The answer is that today, Adrienne Barbeau no longer chases relentless roles or exhausting tours. In her 70s and beyond, she has chosen a simpler rhythm of life centered on family. Her 3 sons, Cody, William, and Walker, are the very core of her world. Adrienne once said with a wry smile, "I don't need a man to complete my life. I just need 3 boys to call me Mom." She still accepts film and television projects, but now with selectivity. Audiences have seen her in Argo, 2012, in series like Sons of Anarchy, Revenge, Criminal Minds, and even General Hospital. With each appearance, Adrienne no longer carries the burden of maintaining the image of Scream Queen or sex symbol. Instead, she stands as proof of endurance, an actress who has evolved with time, still leaving a strong impression even in just a few scenes. And believe it or not, at 80, Adrienne continues to take on roles in independent horror films, willing to scream on screen as she did 40 years ago. In 2025, she appeared in the thriller horror project Oddities, directed by Tyler Savage, reaffirming her magnetism in the very genre that once defined her. She also attended the Hollywood Walk of Fame ceremony honoring John Carpenter, where she was seen glowing and radiant alongside old colleagues. To audiences, she is not just a legend of the 1970s-80s, but an artist who has never stopped moving forward. Beyond the screen, Adrienne continues to write. After her memoir, There Are Worse Things I Could Do, she released the Vampires of Hollywood novel series, a mix of horror and satire, warmly received by readers. Writing, she has said, gives her a freedom the film set never could. No need to follow scripts or directors, only pure creative liberty. In daily life, Adrienne chooses tranquility. She avoids noisy parties, rarely appears in tabloids. Instead, she prefers quiet evenings with her sons, jotting down lines for her books or chatting with close friends. After 2 stormy marriages, Adrienne now finds peace in her small home, where she is both a seasoned artist and a devoted mother. For many fans, the Adrienne Barbeau of today is no longer tied to blood-curdling screams in the dark or the sultry posters that once adorned dorm rooms. She is a woman who has walked through fame and through anxiety, and who now chooses to live fully in the calm she has built for herself, yet still youthful and fearless enough to keep moving forward in her art, even at 80. What makes Adrienne Barbeau unforgettable is not scandal, but rare endurance. A signature husky voice, a scream queen image spanning generations of audiences, and her ability to transform across Broadway stages, horror films, television sitcoms, and animated voice work. She wrote her own legacy through talent and perseverance, proving that true value never fades with time. When you think of Adrienne Barbeau, what comes to mind first? The haunting scream in the fog, or the image of a resilient mother in real life? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if you'd like to continue exploring the untold life stories of Hollywood stars, don't forget to subscribe to the channel.